So first thing we're going to look at today is the domain and period of sine and cosine. So the domain of the sine and cosine functions is a set of all real numbers. So our domain is always going to be all real numbers. To determine the range of these two functions, we consider the unit circle. So for x and for y, all of our values are going to be in between -1 and 1. Our radius is always going to be 1 here. So our range for sine and for cosine is always in between -1 and 1. So our x values and our y values always going to be in between -1 and 1. If we take the sine of whatever angle, this is always going to be in between -1 and 1. So our answer for sine and for cosine, no matter what the angle is, it's always going to be in between -1 and 1. Sine is y and cosine is x. So this is for the range. So again, the same thing I just wrote on the last page. The sine of t or theta, whatever that angle is that we're looking at, that degree or radian, is always going to be in between -1 and 1, and same for cosine, always in between -1 and 1. Adding 2 pi to each value of the t in interval 0 to 2 pi completes a second revolution around the unit circle as shown in the figure below. So if we start with, let's just take this one, the angle pi over 4. This angle here is pi over 4. We can add 2 pi and we just complete a second revolution around the unit circle. So if we add 2 pi to this, we go and get the same, we end up at the same spot that we started with. So we just added a second revolution. So we can always add 2 pi if we're in radians, just to go around the circle again. So this just shows that when t is equal to pi over 4, it's the same thing as pi over 4 plus 2 pi. Next, we have the definition of periodic function. A function f is periodic when there exists a positive real number c such that f of t plus c is equal to f of t. So we're just talking about different periods here. So this right here is the graph for sine. This is one period here. So the graph really helps us see our domain and range. This is just one period, so from 0 to 2 pi. That's one period, one revolution that we're looking at. If we take the sine of pi over 2, our answer would be 1. If we take the sine of pi, our answer is 0. If we take the sine of 3 pi over 2, our answer would be -1. So all of our values for sine are going to be somewhere in between 1 and -1. And we can keep going if we wanted to add a second period, a third period. So our graph goes on forever. That's why our domain is all real numbers, because we can just keep adding periods, just keep going around another revolution around the circle if we wanted to. So our domain is always all real numbers, and our range is in between -1 and 1. This is our cosine graph. So same thing, just looks a little bit different. This one starts at 1, so cosine of 0 would be 1. Cosine of pi over 2 would be 0. Cosine of pi would be negative, or this should be -1. So this is our cosine graph. Same thing, all of our values are in between -1 and 1. And if we wanted to, we could add another period here, keep going, another period, so our graph could just keep going forever as we keep going around the unit circle.